Janine, speaking from Canada, assistant principal. So I think that my general understanding of the outcomes are good. I think the measuring of them is what I struggle with. So if we're talking about thinking critically, to what extent are students doing that? How do we measure that? What is the quality of that? So I think that's where I'm kind of trying to.
I think it's a super place to be, because it really shows you've kind of integrated what these competencies are, but now, how do I know it's really going on? What kind of evidence do I look for? I think it's a great place to be.
I think when I first looked at this grid, I just kept going and I didn't even notice students at the top of the little balloons.
Oh, yeah.
The trees, I'm sorry. The trees.
They're in the leaves somewhere.
I didn't even notice it. I was just thinking, oh, this is what I aspire my teachers to know, right? And so,
that's interesting, yeah.
And so, because if you look, it's like as you go up, it's teachers, 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 and then it's like, but so I think about, if I want my students to, if I want to know more about how students do this, I need to think more. And part of our consultancy later is about, well, how do teachers work collaboratively? How do teachers communicate effectively? How do they know coordinate? All these things relate to them
It's
first.
True. I mean, it's really the competencies they need as well.
So,
no, it's very true. Yeah.
So I'd be like a 3.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. No, I think when I went to all 8 schools in my book, I feel like all of these teachers exercise this. And I was saying to someone the other day, almost the funnest thing about the teachers in these schools, where they were just so engaged in problem solving and just kind of excited about the problem solving. So kind of going to that critical thinking, and then that collaborative piece too. So I remember we had the smallest problem when we were there. My co-author and I, and we started talking about it, and suddenly we had 5 teachers helping us solve our problem, It's almost like they live to problem solve. And so it's really kind of fun to be in a school where teachers are just constant problem solvers on these bigger things, right? Not getting caught up in the minutia of the day and who gets what classroom and who gets what, period or whatever. And so, it's amazing to see teachers constantly be in that mode of problem solving. And then they do it collaboratively. And I think that kind of gets to that whole growth mindset and the kind of academic, self-direction, all of that. So yeah, they have to model that. So.
I'm going to piggyback on what Chad said too. I presented at Deeper Learning, and originally our topic changed. But the thing that our group came up with for Chi Tech was originally the idea of us becoming deeper learners.
Yeah.
Is what was able to start having things trickle down to our students.
I like that word a lot too, deeper learners. I think that's almost I didn't really love that term actually. We should all be deeper learners, right? Yeah. I think it's a great use of the language.
Yeah, because ours was a lot about we looked at all the structural change that happened in our school, and the idea was we were trying to as a leadership group last year figure out which structures are working, and then realized it's not necessarily the structures just facilitated us starting to learn better and to collaborate better.
Yeah, I mean, I always my true confession kind of about my own evolution in high school redesign was I was a person who was always focused on structure. If you have block scheduling, if you have time for teachers to work together, and I was really kind of focused on, the structure versus the instruction comes first, and that was kind of the debate, when Gates was doing their stuff, and there was things called instructional models, theme-based models, all this kind of stuff. And then I remember when we first went to a couple of new tech sites, I really saw how instruction is kind of the lead, and if you know what you want your students to do, and if you're teaching for that, then the structures are going to change for that. And so, yeah, that's a really, I love deeper learners. I like that. So, others, side.
And
my framework.
Katie, we're so glad you're here.
Kate.
This is Kate.
No,
sorry,
yes,
Kate.
okay.
Kate's first time joining us, and we're just kind of jumping in right in the middle. So thank you so much for being here.
No problem. As far as what I think about, we just had an ILT meeting and we were talking about rigor. And the funny thing is that everything we're talking about rigor relates back to deeper learning. So our teachers are actually very concerned with academic and mindset and thinking critically, as opposed to we need to do Common Core, we need to do college readiness standards. So I think that the mindset in our school is there, but as some people brought up, the how to do it across the board and how to measure it is not quite there.
What I think was nice is to see the term rigor evolve to not kind of be, drill and kill, and how high can you jump kind of thing, but to be more robust and broad in terms of how you guys are using that language. Because when I went to the schools, like if I ever used the word, I had to strike rigor from my vocabulary. They hated that word. And probably, again, it was part of the Gates thing, right? Like because that was such an overemphasis. But that's great that your team is looking at this broader like definition of rigor. That's cool.
I think for me, that whole idea of measurement is always a challenge. So within our context, I think one thing we really struggle with is we have kids that thrive on some of these skills in the work program in one domain, but then academics, we read the job performance review of a kid, is it highly motivated, communicates effectively, asks questions, you read that to the teachers, they're like, that can't be the same, right? So how do you leverage sort of that measurement? So in one domain, they would be excelling in some of these, but in an academic framework, they're not. And I think that's too, from classroom to classroom, right? From one subject that could also be true. How do you leverage kind of the strengths of kids in, whether that domain be work or academics or art or extracurriculars, how do you leverage that in different domains, I guess? Because it gets that idea of measurement. If you measure them in one way, a kid might be a disaster, but you can leverage them in a different domain on these same skills, they're thriving. So.
And what I've started to think about is, the students, like you said, at a workplace or an internship, they thrive in the whole collaboration, communication, or they at least get to practice their skills that way. But if you start, and I think what they get surprised about that they don't realize they're practicing and executing is the critical thinking and the problem solving. And so if that becomes so innate to them, it almost looks like a soft skill when you're in a workplace environment because you're communicating effectively. Why? Because you're hearing people, but you're problem solving or you're contributing. And so there's a lot of actually around critical thinking, and again, this is just some I think in what I've been working with groups, but critical thinking and problem solving that actually gets integrated into what we like to call the soft skills, and Chris shared a few people have started to talk about soft skills are the new hard skills, it's kind of a headline. But if critical thinking and problem solving becomes so innate, they start playing that out in all of the things they do that's related to communication and collaboration. So, and even the whole academic mindset or self-direction, because you're constantly going to be thinking, how does this help me? What's the best strategy to get to that? And so I've always, like in the book I say, learning to learn is the foundation of these competencies, but I'm also starting to think about critical thinking and problem solving is the foundation of these 6 competencies. Because if you're not thinking critically and problem solving when you're working with groups, or presenting or integrating feedback into your work, then you're really not critical thinking. So, thank you. All right, other comments?